I was seeing a counselor recently until she broke up with me.
What?
Work offered a free psychological services. You could have a psychiatrist, a psychologist, or a counselor. And I was like, okay, well, I'll set up with a counselor. I really should have picked a shrink instead of a counselor and she said, it's like, with counselors, we more sort of like, give you tasks and stuff to get past stuff, not somebody that you unload your problems on. It's like, well, that's fine. And I would love that.
Okay, finish your story, because like my husband's actually a therapist, so we'll have a conversation.
I'm certainly not alone in this, but pandemic has been tough on me because the things I do to de-stress is go to a movie, go to a concert, things to get out of the house. And for so long during the pandemic, those things were taken away. And I was like, I need better ways to sort of manage my stress level. She talked to me a lot about how two things that I do a lot. First is, how are you doing? And I never want to say good. I don't want to be too high or too low. So then I end up just everything's fine. Like borderline Eeyore. I do that. And then I also don't allow myself to feel things because we're lucky. I have a good life, great kids, great wife, good friends, a nice house, cars that work and all that stuff, and good job. Like whenever something goes wrong, I'm like, well, I guess it's okay. We all deal with these things, and people certainly haven't worked with me. She's like, just stop it. You're allowed to feel sad about stuff. I was like, okay. So then after a handful of weeks where it's like, well, have you been addressing your feelings and talking about stuff? It's like, yeah, I've been doing it. And then finally she's like, you seem to be doing pretty good. We don't need to talk every week. I'm like, okay. Just set up the next appointment whenever you feel like it. And then at the end, she's like, we'll talk again sometime. And then she ended the call. I'm like, I think she just broke up with me. That was definitely a don't call me, I'll call you thing. I was like, I remember those calls. I was like, am I too mentally healthy? Because that doesn't sound right at all.
No, that lady f***ed up.
From Geppetto Studios in New Freedom, Pennsylvania, welcome to the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast, your home for inclusive, positive geek culture, where we talk about movies, comics, music, books, and whatever else we feel like. Please welcome your host. Brad Mendenhall.
Hey kids, it is episode 261 of the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast. It's a sorta sad one. Eric Deutsch and Molly Bailen are with me to talk about the recent passing of comedian Gilbert Gottfried. We get bummed. Anywho, Amy has a question.
What movie would you show to aliens so that they could better understand humans?
Wow, that is an awesome question. What movie would I show to aliens so they could better... I'm trying to think. I am just going a complete blank. I guess E.T.? Which is a movie I haven't seen in so long. I feel like if you're going to have aliens there and you're going to show like the potential of the way people and aliens can interact and like the kindness but still the weirdness and the fear and everything else that like represents the whole human experience, I think that's a good one. Of course, that for all I know, that movie is would be like really appear insensitive to aliens. Aliens like, wait a minute, why are we wearing clothes? Why do aliens in your movies not wear pants? They are able to have interstellar travel, but you can't put a pair of trousers on them. I don't know. It might backfire, but that's what I'm going to go with. E.T. very excited. Returning to the Cosmic Geppetto podcast, my dear friends, Molly Bailen and Eric Deutsch. Guys, how you doing?
Good.
I was letting Molly go first.
I should have introduced you one at a time. That was my bad.
I thought there was going to be a unison thing, and I was kind of waiting, I was like, are we going to like do an in tandem thing? And then I was like, that's how we do it. That's how we do it, Brad.
I was acting like it was the 1950s and just like, ladies first, being a gentleman.
Thank you, sir.
Good Lord. Yes, Molly with her parasol. I'm already happy. I don't get to bring out my parasol humor too often, so thank you for giving me that opening here.
Well, I think that outdated humor is going to be something that's going to be discussed with the topic you have us on for.
Yeah, because not that long ago, they announced the sudden passing of comedian, and I would say like comedian, actor, whatever, but really comedian. He was definitely a comedian who acted. Gilbert Gottfried. My first thought when I heard that news is like, I hope Eric's okay. We have talked before about your Gilbert Gottfried fandom. The three of us were like on a text exchange, making sure you're okay. And what's crazy is it was the same day Godfrey's passing, happened the same day where there was a shooting in New York City.
Yes.
And that happened not far from you, like that was on your subway line, right?
Yep, sure was. Missed it by, 10 minutes.
We were still more worried about the effect that Gilbert's passing had on you. You're okay with the shooting? Okay with the shooting. You missed it? It's like, I missed it. It's like, okay, but are you okay about Gilbert? Gilbert Gottfried is one of those people in pop culture where I think people often, when they think of him, they don't really think of Gilbert Gottfried. They think of the parody of him. They don't really think of what type of comedian or performer or writer or what sort of creative is. They just think about the most exaggerated version of him. And it's sort of similar to, I think, the way people view Bob Dylan, where when people think of and make fun of Bob Dylan, they're thinking of like a comedian rendition of Bob Dylan where like the nasally singing is ramped up and the being unintelligible is ramped up. And it's sort of the same with Gilbert Gottfried. You've been a fan of his for a long time. And as a performer, like, why were you such a fan of Gilbert Gottfried?
He is my comedy god. So, it's not just like that I was a fan, but he was my, my number one. And there's obviously a lot of reasons. I think, the number one reason why he did not care. He had his brand of comedy that he thought was funny, and he was going to do that. And he did not care what anybody thought, as long as he was enjoying himself. Whether it was doing impressions and making references to actors or other comedians that no one under the age of 70 would even know who they are, whether whipping out his Peter Lorre and Humphrey Bogart impressions, that's really cutting-edge humor for the kids, or his Groucho Marx impression, but not Groucho Marx, specifically the older Groucho Marx when he sort of was like slow and slurring his words. What I became a real big fan of his was from his frequent appearances back in the 90s and the early aughts on Howard Stern. Here's a Jewish guy telling the most anti-Semitic jokes you can possibly think of, and the most filthy NC-17 rated obscene jokes and the most racist possible jokes you can possibly think of. Yet he got away with it. And I don't, almost no one gets away with that stuff, but he did. And I don't even think he cared if he got away with it or not. I mean, listen, everyone knows about, he lost the Aflac duck job because of a tweet that he made. But he clung with that material, the anti-Semitic, obscene, racist, obscure stuff, because he thought it was funny and it entertained him. Somehow he made it work. And so I just love that attitude of like, I don't really care. This is what I like. This is what I'm going to do. If I'm successful, great. If I'm not, whatever, I'm going out there anyway.
He didn't care. And he did something similar because Don Rickles would do the same stuff.
Yes. Don Rickles. Yeah, absolutely. He's the other one that got away with it. Yep.
How? And part of it is he began in an era where there was more leeway to do stuff right or wrong. Also, I think he was able to get away with some of that because it wasn't like he wasn't suave. George Clooney making the same jokes, it would land completely different because then it feels like punching down. But because it was Gilbert Gottfried, who was awkward and homely and weird, it's like, okay, yeah, he can say that stuff because he's not punching down. When you look like Gilbert Gottfried, everything feels like punching up. Molly, what space does Gilbert Gottfried take up in your head?
Honestly, Comedy Central roasts is really where I feel like where I've seen him shine. And then Aristocrats. I think what I've always loved about Gilbert Gottfried is that he's really self-aware. And I actually, to your point about how he's gotten away with this really just scathing, anti-Semitic, racist humor, is I actually don't think he's a mean-spirited dude. And I think there's not to be like hippy-dippy about it, but I think that there's a underlying energy when people punch down. He's a character, and the delivery of that really high-pitched, grating, frustrated voice. It's just I don't know. There's a being Jewish myself. Like there's something I think there's a little part of our soul that he's sort of expressing in like that characterization of himself. And he's just kind of this like, I don't know. I just think he's just kind of this cute little guy. All of that just kind of lends itself to him being a little, I don't know, like pissed and cuddly while he's delivering all of this. And it's completely scathing. He had a whole bit about like Joan Rivers having sex with him in the back of like the bar of like Catch a Rising Star, which is like completely, he has gone into graphic detail about Joan Rivers' vagina, and it's just completely amazing.
He keeps going with those jokes.
Oh yeah, he'd get something, he'd run it into the ground.
His first time on Letterman, he's like, you're just so beautiful. I would just love to cut off your skin, and just kept going about the ways he would mutilate the audience members. It takes just so much courage and tenacity because there's a way to make those jokes work. Very different style comedian, but Ellen DeGeneres would do the same thing where you lock onto the joke and you keep going till it's not funny anymore. And then you go a little bit longer and eventually it just comes back around. But comedians tend to be pleasers and they want the laugh after each line. So it's hard to just keep going. It's like, okay, I'm going to lose the audience for a bit and they're not going to like it. And people are going to turn on me, and you just keep plugging through. And be it Gilbert Gottfried, Ellen DeGeneres, Andy Kaufman, that was his whole thing, was to just keep going 5 minutes after the joke stopped being funny and just keep pounding away at it. There's a real intelligence there that would be hidden under the awkwardness. I mean, he looked like he didn't know, often when he performed, he looked like he didn't know how to control his body.
Yeah, the arms would kind of be flailing around a bit, yeah.
Which can be pardon the pun, could be disarming. Eric, had you ever seen Godfrey live?
I saw him twice.
Oh, cool.
Maybe about 15 years ago or so, my wife took me to see him do stand-up here in New York City for my birthday present. I think it was Caroline's in Manhattan. So that was the first time I saw him. The second time I saw him actually was a live recording of his podcast. If you even remotely like Gilbert's humor, or if you really even remotely are interested in old Hollywood or really getting behind the scenes stuff of actors and singers, definitely give his podcast a listen because it's really just incredible. He did more than 400 episodes. I saw, so I went and I saw again at Caroline's when he had Whoopi Goldberg on his podcast. So I got to see him live then again, and that wasn't stand up. Obviously, he was recording of his podcast. So I got to see him twice. And actually, a big highlight of my life was when the podcast was done recording. I realized that I had been seated like right in the line of where he was going to be walking off the stage. And so as he's coming off, obviously everyone's starting to form a mob near the end of the stage because everyone that's there wants to say hi to him or get their picture. So I get my phone out, figure maybe I can snap a quick selfie of him, and I realized it's just not going to happen. It's too nuts. But as he walked by, I managed to shake his hand and just tell him, and I was a big fan of his for a really long time. He said, "Oh, thank you." So that was like a big life highlight. Just so at least I got to do that. A very long answer to your question. Yes, I saw him live.
He actually was scheduled, I think it was July. He was scheduled to come to not too far from where I live, a place called Magooby's Joke House, which gets a lot of name. Guys, they're going to get Chris Rock's brother.
But not Chris Rock.
Not Chris Rock. Chris Rock's brother. But what's funny is Chris Rock's brother has been making the news lately because Chris Rock has been very quiet about the Will Smith slap. Chris Rock's brother has been talking a lot about it. They announced that he was going to be at Magooby's, and then a week or two later, the Will Smith Chris Rock slap happened, and all of a sudden this guy becomes, it's not fair for me to say, but it does seem like the less well-known comedian brother decided it was a chance for him to get some press. But yeah, Magooby's got the other Rock brother, Andrew Dice Clay.
Oh!
Yeah.
So if you go to YouTube and Google Gilbert Gottfried, Andrew Dice Clay, you see a great classic clip from the old Howard Stern Channel 9 show from back in the 90s of Gilbert wearing a big giant jacket and doing a Dice Clay impression.
I don't know if impression is even the right thing. And I don't think I saw that, but I've seen Gilbert would do that impersonation during his comedy bits. And he would just, it was so weird. He would just partway through his bit, Gilbert would just start doing Dice Clay impersonation, but still sounding exactly like him. And he wouldn't even tell the joke. He would just like mumble through the cadence.
Yes. Like you'd be like, yeah.
But Gilbert was set to be there in July, and we were actually talking, me and some coworkers were talking about going to see Gilbert Gottfried. And it was also funny explaining to people exactly what Gilbert Gottfried was, because to a lot of people, a whole generation, he was the parrot from Aladdin, which was such a good use of Gilbert Gottfried, because it's not like he's an impressionist. He does one thing, but he does it in a way that no one else can duplicate. So if you just put him in the very specific right thing, like the parrot from Aladdin, he was perfect in that. And so memorable to the point where when he passed away, trying to explain to my kids, it's like, yeah, this comedian died. It's like, oh, he was the parrot from Aladdin. It's like, not Iago. It's like, exactly, Iago. My kids wanted to then watch the second. I don't know. Do you remember there was a sequel to Aladdin, a direct-to-DVD thing?
No.
You're lucky. It was bad. There was a period of time where Disney decided to make a lot of money by making really crappy sequels to their big hit movies and releasing them direct to DVD or VHS at that point. They would cheap out on the animation. The animation didn't look nearly as good. The songs would be pretty terrible, and they wouldn't get the same voice actors. And so they did this directed to sequel, Return of Jafar. They got Gilbert Gottfried. They didn't get Robin Williams because Robin Williams was really mad at Disney, so they got the voice actor who does Homer Simpson. So the genie from Aladdin sounded a lot like Homer Simpson, which was weird.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Yee.
They made Iago basically turn good guy in it. I was like, okay, this is all weird, because Gilbert Gottfried does not him being the sympathetic parrot, evil parrot. I was like, I what am I watching? And that came out when I was in college. So it was like, huh. Now, first off, I don't know why I'm watching this, but also second, it's like, this is pretty bad. And my kids, it's on Disney Plus, and my kids wanted to watch it because, in respect to Gilbert Gottfried, because I have sweet kids, and I was like, yeah, I think Mom will watch that with you. I'll go and edit a podcast. Eric, aside from Iago and aside from his comedy, is there, because he's done a lot of pop culture stuff, is there something that you particularly like, or something you would recommend to somebody who's like trying to figure Gilbert Gottfried out? It's like, oh, you should watch this, or this was a funny bit.
The classic stuff is the stuff when he would be on Stern. The stuff that really stands out from his Stern appearances are, if you this is all on YouTube, so if you go to YouTube and you look up Gilbert Gottfried Howard Stern and then add in like the following terms, if you look up Amy Heckerling's Nanny, there is something where there's an incredibly funny story where he gets into an argument with Amy Heckerling's nanny on the show because he had been at Amy Heckerling's house, and there was a whole, I won't ruin it for you, but it's really funny. There's a guy named Abe Hirschfeld. Now, this is not the famous artist Abe Hirschfeld. This is Abe Hirschfeld, who's one of those weird New York City people that just kind of used to always be around and be in the news for some reason, and you never really knew why. And he called into the Stern Show a couple of times, and they got him going. They got him to repeat the same joke like 50 times, and there's just that infectious, evil Gilbert laugh going on the whole time. So I would say those are the two things for that. You know, before I knew him even from the Stern Show when I was a little bit younger. Of course, he was one of the two hosts of USA Up All Night, and I used to love watching him with those just consciously bad segments that he would host on USA with the B movies late at night. Really, I've never gone to YouTube to see if any of his old stuff is there, but these days I feel like everything's on YouTube, so it's probably there. I don't really know where else you would be able to see old stuff from USA Up All Night.
I remember, and I have a real affection for that style of. It used to be the UHF. Every town had their own late night Elvira knockoff, and it wouldn't necessarily be a scantily clad woman doing an intro with corny bits, but often it was. Vampira, Elvira, and Up All Night was doing the same thing. And I always had a lot of affection for that because it was just perfect. I can't sleep. I'm going to watch something crappy. USA Network did it so well. And Gilbert Gottfried, who had an affection for that style of entertainment,
right,
was such a good choice for that. And I do remember that. And the ads were Gilbert doing the Gilbert voice. Molly, what is a piece of entertainment of Gilbert's that you sort of remember or that pops out at you?
You know, as you guys were talking, because I remember, and I think we were all probably a little too old to kind of appreciate Aladdin when it actually came out. Like, we weren't of that, like, really, like, young kid age, you know, where we've been like, oh, you know, Aladdin. So I just remember when it came out I had to have been in my teens already, maybe my late teens, and you know, remembering Iago as the voice in Gilbert Gottfried and already knowing who he was. So he was already like a property at that time. But, you know, as Eric was saying about kind of doing USA Up All Night, I'm like, God, did I do some of that? And that's where I remember him from, like early on. And I can't place, maybe he's just been this like character for so long doing all this different material. Like, oh yeah, that's right. Wasn't there like a Hollywood Squares thing that he was doing for a while? And like Affleck, and then I was like, oh yeah, that's right, Howard Stern. I remember he was doing some of that stuff. So dude was just getting like work kind of everywhere, but I don't remember him. He never really went like the David Spade route, like maybe because he had more self-respect. I don't know if they just couldn't find him, you know, like a lot of those like SNL actors who, you know, ended up, you know, or like, you know, go like an Eddie Murphy route where you get a lot of these kind of silly comedy movies. He like always retained this like comedian type work, even though a lot of it was kind of like, some of it was kind of lowbrow. But yeah, I can't remember something other than the roast that really like stuck with me as like comedian stuff, or like other kind of pop culture-y stuff that he might have done prior to that.
Well, he always, and who knows, maybe I'm wrong, and it was always very structured, but it always seemed like they gave him a lot of leash to be whoever he was going to be in whatever he did. Sort of a later thing, and it wasn't a particularly good movie, but he had a great bit in A Million Ways to Die in the West, the Seth MacFarlane film. They're at a presentation, and it's like, and everyone, President Abraham Lincoln, and then Gilbert Gottfried comes out and gives an insane and profane and weird speech. It's like, I get to have all the ice cream I want. What the hell is this? And then the punchline to it, aside from just this crazy, give me my money and walk off, Seth MacFarlane's like, I don't think that's really the president. It felt like they just said, all right, Gilbert, you're President Lincoln, but you're not really President Lincoln. Just go and give us 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long, and make it as crazy as possible. And then MacFarlane had a joke that would work for whatever he said. I was like, that's pretty smart. I can't see him doing anything different. I don't think you could put him in enough of a box. There was never going to be a movie of Gilbert Gottfried playing anyone in a movie. I just can't imagine them containing him for an hour and a half in a narrative film. Put him in Problem Child, where he's just an insane adoption agent guy, or Abraham Lincoln, A Million Ways to Die in the West,
He was in one of the Beverly Hills Cops. He had a small part. Speaking of Dice Clay, he had a small part in Ford Fairlane.
Oh, well, we all watched that.
I watched that way too much back in high school.
Really? You were the one.
Oh, yes. I taped it off HBO.
He did he appeared on the Cosby Show, and that was the biggest show on the planet. Now it seems weird.
It does, yeah.
My brain is trying to decide whether to make the easy joke or not.
Class, please welcome our graduation speaker, President Abraham Lincoln.
Hiya, schmucks! 7 years ago, I was broke, just like you. But now I'm the president, and I'm so rich, I can have all the licorice I want.
I don't think that's the real President Lincoln.
He was so good in small doses because you were not going to get him to do anything other than Gilbert.
Mm.
You weren't going to have him as a romantic lead. You weren't going to have him as Arnold Schwarzenegger's sidekick because he would pull too much focus away. It was actually pretty cool what they did with Aladdin. One thing I always liked about the Aladdin Iago thing, the Iago Jafar thing, and I would love to know again how much of this was scripted and how did they give him a little bit of leeway. They obviously gave Robin Williams a lot of leeway in that film. I like that in that movie. When you watch it again, I like the fact that Iago and Jafar seemed like buddies. And there was like laughter between the two of them, and there was a great scene where he's packing all the stuff to get away, and then he pulls out a picture of Iago pulls out a picture of himself, and Jafar's like, "Well, what about this? I think this one. I'm not sure if I like my smile in this picture." It's like, "Oh, that's nice. They got a picture taken together. That's cool." And I would love to know how much leeway and room they gave him to do his thing, because it was cool stuff.
Was that a llama in the background, just as a tangent? What the hell was that?
Unfortunately, I was talking to these guys about how I live in an interesting neighborhood, and there's a gentleman who has converted a lawnmower into some form of vehicle and is testing it out around my house.
Good gracious.
I literally watched him like spin out and have to restart the thing, like a lawnmower, pull the cord. He used the lawnmower bag as kind of like a makeshift seat. So that's likely what we were hearing there. So I apologize, listeners.
I have nowhere to go with that.
I mean, Molly, you're in Portland. It wouldn't surprise me if there was a llama walking around the streets. I always reading about weird stuff going on in Portland.
There are 2 famous llamas, actually.
There you go.
They're therapy llamas. I get taken around everywhere. It's like a legit thing. They've showed up in like my workplace and other people's workplaces. I've seen them at 2 different events, just kind of out and about. So it's like a thing.
I'm laughing, but I'm not surprised.
No, the laughter is like, of course. I'm just looking through the IMDb. It is interesting who got what you can do with Gilbert Gottfried. And he did a lot of sketch work he was on SNL one season, did a lot of stuff on the late night shows. Does anybody remember the Clerks animated series?
I remember its existence. I never watched it, but I know where you're going with this.
It was bad. Surprise, surprise. Gilbert Gottfried voiced Patrick Swayze on an episode.
And Seinfeld, too.
Which is brilliant. It's like, you're not going to get Patrick Swayze or whatever, and just the idea is like, okay, and they drew a handsome Patrick Swayze, and then just opens his mouth, and there's Gilbert's voice, and just have no one react to it. It's like, yeah, that's what Patrick Swayze sounds like. Stern used him frequently. He was a frequent guest. Stern produced a show, Son of the Beach, and he had him on there. And another brilliant idea. I think this was Stern, but it was definitely, if it wasn't Stern, it was a comedy sketch show where they just had a book on tape recording of 50 Shades of Grey with Gilbert Gottfried and him just reading it.
Yep, that's on YouTube too.
There's also released Gilbert calling into the Stern show, or like behind the scenes to set up like his next appearance, and him not doing the voice. And it was like he still sounded like Gilbert Gottfried, but he definitely was toned down. You know, he sounded like sort of a normal guy with a bit of a nasally voice.
Yeah, there's a couple of interviews out there with him where he actually sort of mellows out and kind of talks in his, his non-screaming stage voice, and he sounds sort of like just like, "Oh, hi, yeah." Like, I mean, it's odd when you know this guy as this just, screaming, screeching person with this famous abrasive voice, to hear him, "Oh, hi, well, yeah, when I was a kid." And you get some of that if you watch the documentary that came out about him a few years ago, appropriately named Gilbert.
My understanding is, in real life, he was, and it's sort of the same thing we talked about Don Rickles, where apparently in real life, when Don Rickles wasn't tearing the hell out of people when he was on stage, he was about the nicest, sweetest person he could be off stage. I sort of got that impression, and from what I've heard, and it's obviously it's a weird thing where obviously you're going to say nice things about people when they pass away, but it does sound like he was pretty beloved behind the scenes and was known as being like quirky. I think he was known to be notoriously cheap.
Yes, very much so. And like took pride in it.
But also like very sweet natured and kind. Is that sort of what you've pulled away from this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when his wife was on the podcast, a couple of times, and like his wife's a big part of the documentary, and you get the sense that she obviously sees the quote unquote real Gilbert, that the rest of us don't. And you really get that sense that for his two kids and his wife, he really, and his sisters, that, he really is just, this very humble, soft-spoken person, just completely at odds with his public persona.
What's your go-to? Eric, you've talked about how he was an important comedic presence in your life. What's the thing, like, when you think of, like, Gilbert Gottfried, is it the Stern stuff, or is there something else where it's like, that is the thing that is the most crystallized? That is the fandom. That's what I check out all the time on YouTube. What is that thing for you?
It's mostly the Stern stuff. There's one thing that I obviously couldn't hear because it wasn't recorded that I wish I could. And to me, this is my favorite all-time Gilbert story. It's been told out there before. It's not like, this is, a Cosmic Geppetto exclusive news or anything. But he, back in the 80s, for some reason, he was booked to be the opening act for a Go-Go's concert. He was bombing because the crowd was 13-year-old girls and their mothers. This was not his crowd. So he realizes he's bombing, and he decides to tell every possible filthy joke you can possibly think of involving the C word for women's most intimate of areas, and continues to tell them over and over and over again to this crowd of teen girls and their mothers. And I absolutely love that story.
Who books him that gig?
I have to assume someone who got fired on the spot.
I just, first off, have you guys been to a concert with a comedian as the opening act?
I don't think so. Oh, yes. You know what? Actually, I have. Now that I think, yes, I did once, and I hated it. I saw Faith No More, and they had a guy named Neil Hamburger open for them. I absolutely hated him, and I hated the fact that I was watching a comedian waiting for Faith No More to come out.
Molly, have you ever seen a comedian
open for a concert? No, but I can totally see Mike Patton getting a comedian to open for. That's some Mr. Bungle vibe there, but
yeah, it was. It would have fit if it had been Mr. Bungle, frankly.
Yeah, it would have. Yeah. No, I've never seen a comedian open up for a concert before. It's an odd choice.
It's so weird because you're just not in. Openers are tough anyway because you're there to see whoever you're there to see. Faith No More, U2, whatever. It's always a weird mixed bag anyway because unless they really knock you out, they're just somebody that you're passing time to get, and you can be pretty sort of pissy about it. But then to have a comedian at the beginning, before the show starts, everyone's getting antsy. People are coming in, they're talking. It's like, that's just got to be a brutal thing. I just can't imagine that working. I saw it once. I can't remember the name of the comedian, but I'm a big fan of Michael Penn and his wife, Amy Mann. Amy Mann, best known probably, she was in the band Till Tuesday that had the song Voices Carry, and then her solo music was used for the movie Magnolia. And Michael Penn, probably best known for the song No Myth, which most people think is entitled Romeo and Black Jeans. I'm a big fan of both of them, and they did a tour where they had a comedian. Patton Oswalt was with them for a good chunk of the tour, but I didn't see them when they had Patton Oswalt. But the thing was, it actually worked because the comedian stayed on stage the entire time because Michael Penn and Amy Mann weren't very good at crowd work. So they would actually just mumble in the microphone. It's like, yeah, it would be nice if we had someone who could like talk to the crowd while we tune our guitars, and he would come out and do a bit. And they sort of interacted well. That's the only time I saw it, and it did work well. But in general, it seems like a terrible idea of all the people to open for the Go-Go's. And that was in the 80s?
This is in the 80s, yeah.
We knew who Gilbert Gottfried was then. It couldn't have been a surprise. Somebody must have been a fan.
Yeah, like maybe the booking agent of that venue or something like that. Because like I'm just thinking in the 80s, like, you know, since it was the Go-Go's, maybe it should have been like Paula Poundstone instead or something. I don't know. It just...
Eric, am I remembering right? You're a Belinda Carlisle fan.
Oh, that's my honey.
Aw.
You would have been the only one there really thrilled. It was like you get a chance to...
Yeah, but I only like her solo stuff. I never would have been at a Go-Go's concert.
Oh, well, now this is just opening up a whole new conversation.
Yes, that's right, people. I like Faith No More and also Belinda Carlisle. It can be done.
I remember I bought, and I can't remember the album. It was Faith No More adjacent, and also at the same time I bought the Macy Graves first album, and I went up to the counter to run it through. It's like, the register's just going to take those two in one purchase, and it's going to break the computer.
That's funny you say that, because when I was in college, Faith No More, a new album came out around the same time Natalie Merchant released an album. And I bought them both at the same time, and I remember saying to one of my roommates, "Oh, this is going to be fun. I bet you the cashier's going to be like, what is going on here? You're buying Natalie Merchant and Faith No More," and the cashier didn't blink an eye, and I got home and I was really disappointed. I said, they didn't say anything.
I worked at a record store when I was in college. We didn't care. You work registers long enough in enough different places, you just stop giving a crap. And I worked at a video store that had a back room. And after a while, I was like, oh, I didn't realize how many people rented porn. And you just stop caring after a while. I was like, oh, this guy really likes Fat Sluts 5. All right, there you go, buddy. More power to you.
It's the one with the best plot of the original 5 of that series.
Yeah, usually those series break down after the third one, but it was funny. I was trying to come up with like a clever porn title. It was like, anything I come up that's really clever, I'm going to have to bleep out anyway.
I wanted to ask you guys, because I was thinking about this, about celebrity deaths. And, you know, as the three of us march deeper into our 40s, more and more celebrity deaths are happening of the people that we grew up idolizing, and you know, people of our generation are starting to get a little long in the tooth. And I was thinking about, I mean, this is the hardest I've ever taken a celebrity death. And I was thinking of what were the ones before this that really, like, there's always a lot of them that happen, but what are the ones that are really at the top level? Before this, I thought of 3 others that really particularly hit me hard. It was Jim Henson, Carrie Fisher, and George Harrison. I wondered what you two, what have been your few real tough celebrity deaths that you've both had dealt with?
I'm trying to think of the most recent one. Alan Rickman was one that I really was bummed about. Paul Mooney. I love Paul Mooney. I was really sad that he passed away. Oh my gosh. You absolutely need to check out his stand-up if you haven't. It's incredible.
Yeah, he did he was on the Chappelle Show.
Yeah, that's what I know him from, Chappelle Show.
Yep, totally. But his stand-up is like, and he worked with Richard Pryor, and it's top notch. Those are the 2 that come to mind, top of mind. I mean, Carrie Fisher too. Carrie Fisher was really hard.
Carrie Fisher was really sad. It's a shame to say. It wasn't a surprise though, because she wasn't a young woman and she had lived so hard.
Yeah.
so many guys our age, and probably more than a few girls, had just a huge crush on Princess Leia. That really was really sad, and because she passed away like a year or two before the final Star Wars, so knowing that we were going to see her one last time and wondering what that was going to be that was really challenging. I think two for me, a real famous one, and one that took a lot of people by surprise, when Robin Williams passed away.
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I had lived through peak Robin Williams A-list star, when every year there would be a big screen movie with him, and that would just focus on all the energy and everything, and seeing the Oscar winning and Oscar caliber work he did in Good Will Hunting and Awakenings. It was just tough because he was so alive, even as he got a little bit older, and he just had so much energy. And it was really heartbreaking when he passed away, and then finding out that the medical issues he had and what it did to him, that was really tough. Much, much, much lesser known, which in and of itself breaks my heart. I was a huge fan of the musician Chris Whitley. He had like a couple of alternative radio almost hits, an impossibly charismatic and talented performer who I had seen live so many times, and I had actually got a chance to meet him a few times. And one of the few times, I never would actually go out of my way to talk to performers, but I talked to him a couple times, and he actually engaged with me in conversation. And when I was like 22, 23 years old when he did that, and it was a big deal for me. It's like, oh my God, he talked to me, and it was so cool, and it was really nice. The last time I had seen him in concert, he wasn't very good. Dave Matthews created a record label as sort of a place for people that Dave Matthews was a fan of. And Dave Matthews was a big Chris Whitley fan. And the idea was that he was creating this label for artists who had sort of had their shot and it didn't quite click, but to give them a second opportunity. He signed Chris Whitley. Dave Matthews played on the album and was doing everything they could to try to like reinvigorate his career. And it didn't work. I saw him in concert after that album, and it was a lifeless performance. It was only like, he was only on stage for 45, 50 minutes. Like, it was a short show, and he just didn't seem into it. Like, he seemed bummed by what happened. Like, I shouldn't speak for him, but it seemed like he had thought he was going to have a chance to sort of reinvigorate his career. It was the last time I saw him. So it was like a little bit of a disappointing show. And then less than a year later, he passed away from lung cancer.
Oh.
And it was just out of nowhere. It got like a little half-inch blurb in an issue of Entertainment Weekly because he passed away, little known. 6 months before he passed, he was like on eBay selling guitars that he had used to record different albums. There's so many things tied in there. So it was just really sad. This incredibly talented guy who some of his music had still influenced and laid a track on stuff that I'm into today. Like, it really informed my taste in music. So that was really hard. And it was tough because Gilbert Gottfried passes away. You have all these great memories, and so many other people and so many other celebrities and comedians and other people that you like and respect sharing all this stuff. And that's a nice thing because there's a feeling of community. And it was the same way with Robin Williams. So many people spoke up about Robin Williams and all the memories we all had. It's tough when somebody that you're into and you really like and their music or whatever entertainment they create touches you, and then sort of they pass away with very little acknowledgement. And that sort of broke my heart. And the nice thing, I have become, friends is too strong a term, but his brother, Daniel Whitley, who's also a really good a musician, has actually been on this show.
Oh.
It's sort of funny. We're Facebook friends. So like one day I like installed new flooring in my basement, and Dan Whitley like gave like a thumbs up. It's like, hey, that looks great. It's like, oh my God, my hero's brother is like thumbs upping me on Facebook because of my woodworking skills.
Yeah, Facebook's definitely made those connections really, like when something like that happens through social media, it just justifies social media. Those are like cool moments. Yeah,
well, Eric can speak. Sam Jones has he's given you a thumbs up or the like.
Has he? I don't know. I know that John Morton, who we had on Flash Gordon Minute, Dak from Empire Strikes Back, and John the co-pilot in Flash Gordon Minute, I'm connected to him on Facebook, and he's like, sends me birthday wishes on my birthday and thumbs up my stuff. And that's that's cool.
Such a nice guy.
Yeah, and Danny Fingerroth, who was one of my childhood comic book gods, I've connected to him on Facebook after meeting him at Comic-Con, part of Cosmic Geppetto's Comic-Con coverage from years ago. I interact with him on Facebook as well. So yeah, you get a couple of like people that when you're a little kid, they're just, these names that you never really think, oh, wow. Suddenly you're older and you connect with them, and it's like a nice little thing.
This has been a great talking with you. It's turned into a bit of a bummer, but I guess we should have seen that coming.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I guess I made it a bit. We need to end on a lighter note somehow.
I'm gonna start with Molly. I want you to plug your pluggables, but also just something cool going on or something that you're into right now.
What am I into right now? Playing guitar. I'm starting to learn guitar, so that's been a thing, and I'm learning some Smashing Pumpkins. So yes, that's dating me, but whatever. I'm in good company. So I'm learning 1979 right now. But one of the things I've wanted to do for years is to pick up the guitar and learn to play it. My parents were kind of a pain in the ass because I wanted to play early on. They're like, we don't want to listen to that. You have to play the clarinet. I'm like, well, it's not really.
Oh, God, I don't see you playing the clarinet in the least.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I played for years, and I played bass clarinet. So that's, my musical foundation. But anyway, that got ditched at college. And so I'm really happy that I get to play now. And I have the privilege of lessons, which I think is, I'm just going to encourage everybody, if you ever want to pick something up, like spend the money to get somebody qualified to teach you, because it's a true gift, and you go a lot faster that way, and it keeps you motivated. And so I'm a big proponent of it. And then the other thing I'm doing right now is editing. I'm producing a meditation podcast called Wednesday Wake Up. So it's on WednesdayWakeUp.com, and it's this kind of fusion of meditation and Buddhism and psychology. And so that's the clean living I'm doing.
Very cool. Eric, what about you?
Nothing nearly as exciting or as what Molly's doing. We're doing some traveling around this year. We just got back from the family just did a little trip to an indoor water park. We'll be going down to Philadelphia soon. We'll be going to Disney World for the first time this summer with the children. So just getting around the country, giving the kids some memories to last a lifetime.
When this episode, by the time this episode airs, more than likely, to piggybacking on Molly, I've been playing guitar for years. And then finally, because of the pandemic, started, got a couple of guys together, and we would meet up just to have some socialization, learn some songs. And by the time this episode comes out, we will have had our first performance out. We're doing a little 4-song set at a local establishment that allows open mics. So yeah, that's going to be really exciting. You can check out the Facebook page, Mendenhall the Band, and we'll probably have a video posted. We are going to take video of it, so if you want to see what it looks like when I sing in front of like a room full of people who are not interested at all.
Oh, I want to see it. I definitely want to see it.
Please. I so want to see that. I would pay money to see that. I would pay very good money to see that.
Yeah, I wish I was enough to come pay money to see that.
I don't know. Eric, I need your help with this. Because, I'm going to be, worried about the stage fright.
Oh, you bastard. Don't you dare do this. Oh.
Yes.
I'm going to be there. It's going to be stage fright. I'm not sure. I mean, what am I going to do, Eric? What am I going to do?
Damn you, Mendenhall and Mendenhall the Band. Well, if you're standing under the lights and you're sweating and you forget the words and you drop your guitar pick and you look outside into the crowd and there's only 4 people there and their backs are all to you, don't worry about it, Brad. Flash will save every one of us.
Hey! So good.
That wraps episode 261. Big thanks to Eric Deutsch and Molly Bailen. So good talking to them. I don't think any other guests make me laugh more. Also big thanks to Amy Kenrup. We have been friends for decades, and she is very dear to me. Next time on the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast, Sean Reynolds returns to talk about the music of Hayam and Wet Leg. Till then, in the words of Jarf Hardin,
see you in the funny pages.
Subscribe to the Cosmic Geppetto Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever quality podcasts can be found. Rate and review us while there. Follow us on Twitter at CosmicGPod, and we will follow you back. Unless you're a jerk. We don't follow jerks. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cosmic Geppetto. We love hearing your ideas for upcoming episodes. Email us at cosmicgeppetto@comcast.net.
I'm already happy I don't get to bring out my parasol humor too often, so thank you for giving me that opening here.